which is by CC Winans. I love this song. I heard this song when I was a kid. This is before I was a believer. My mom used to play this song all the time. It's without love, there's no need to prophesy. Without love, there will be no blue skies. Without love, we're all just wasting time. Love's the key to eternal life. When we look at the aspects of love in the life of a believer, we have to come to realize that love, faith, and hope, all three of these things inhabits eternity. God says that he has put eternity on the hearts of men. But not only has he put eternity on the hearts of men, he has given us access to eternal things if we was to connect ourselves to him, where he lives, where he dwells. But when it goes through that list, it says the greatest of these three is love. Love. It didn't say the law was the greatest. It didn't say holiness was the greatest. It didn't say sacrifices was the greatest. It didn't say feeding the poor and prophesying and preaching and have all of this knowledge and spiritual wisdom and all of these great mysteries. It didn't say that those things was the greatest. It said that love was the greatest. I want us to understand something, that we presume that God measures our walk and our when he says, good job, well done, son. We presume that he measures that based off of a works-based salvation. So how many souls did you win to the kingdom? How many people did you preach to? How many sermons did you deliver? How hard did you devote yourself to prayer? How hard did you devote yourself to reading your word? How hard did you devote yourself to the need and to the application of others? But God doesn't measure it based off of that. God measures your eternal state and welcoming into eternity based off your love. The prizes and the gifts that you'll be given is based off of your love. There is one person who will probably have more in heaven, prize-wise, or given by God, and they probably didn't do as much ministry as the biggest evangelist. But it's because their love walk was in tune with what God desired, because it is the highest and the supreme ethic in the universe. See, a lot of us as believers, we focus ourselves so much on doing right and accomplishing things and getting back in the grind and all this different type of stuff, when God says that all of those things means absolutely nothing if your heart of love is not right. So how do we express love? See, our assumption of how love is expressed, unfortunately, is seen through how we stand up for the needs and the cause of those who need it, of protecting the little guy, the oppressed people, the people who is hurting, the people who need to be defended. That is one aspect of love, but that is not the highest aspect of love. I love the way that Jesus put it because it's so simple. Jesus said, it is easy to love those who love you back. I don't think people understand that. It is easy to love people who love you back. So the people that don't talk bad about you, the people that accept you as their own, it's easy to love them. The Bible says that anybody can do that. The highest expression of love in the life of a believer, remember Christ says that they will know us by our love. The highest expression of love in the life of a believer is how he loves his enemies. When you see your enemy hurting, which we don't really have enemies, but if a person was an enemy to you, does it make you cry when they hurt? Does it make you sad when they're down? Does it make you sad to see them living the life that God may not have called them to live? Does it hurt you when they hurt you? And it's not because they hurt you, but it's because you know that they are hurting and therefore they decided to hurt you and from a place of their own hurt. I'm going to put it this way. The true expression of God's love is what we saw Jesus do on the cross. These are people who had spat on him. These are people who had whipped him. They had did all of these different type of demoralizing things to him, and they insulted him and everything that you can imagine that they was doing to a guy. And mind you, this hurt the most. The reason why this hurt the most is because he was the one who created them. He knew the hairs that was on their head. It's almost like your own children is now stabbing you in the back and beating you, and yet you are innocent in your approach towards them. So you got to see it from this perspective, that in the midst of all of this going on, Jesus says something so profound. He says, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Most people think that he's saying this to throw people away from God's wrath because God is about to come down and strike them down, so God's got to forgive them. No, that's not what Jesus is communicating. He says, Father, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. Jesus is expressing at that moment the highest level, and the not only the highest level, but the most profound expression of what his love looks like. It's in the heat of the battle, the heat of the moment, that he's willing to say, Lord, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Which means he was for the people that was hurting him, and not against them. He was pleading their cause. He was pleading their case. He was fighting for them, although he was the target of their anger, the target of their offenses. He cared more about where they was in eternity and where they was mentally and emotionally than he did about his own self. That's why the Bible says that he did not even defend himself. He left himself up into the hands of God who judges justly. But his heart was so enveloped with loving the people that even disagreed with him and hated him. This is how God measures our love. This is why God says, you can go and feed all of the poor people in the world. But he says it's clean your symbols. You can know all of the prophetic messages, all of the deep stuff. The stuff that'll make people shake and quiver in their seats and be so smart and intelligent, all this different type of stuff, but that's not love. If it says that you do these things, but yet you don't have love, it means that those things are not love. The highest expression of love is how we treat our enemies. Now, when we think about this, the reason why this gets very difficult, very hard, is because a person has unforgiveness and bitterness in their heart. And they're like, man, I want to love. I want to love like Christ loved, but how do I get over the fact that when I'm offended and when I'm hurt and when I'm emotional and when I'm mad and I'm sad and I'm angry and I have all of these reasons to have antipathy towards a person because they did me wrong, you must consider two things. I love the parable when it talks about the man who owed a debt. This man came to a king or a ruler, and the king and the ruler said, man, you owe me $5 million. I'm gonna need my money back. But then the man said, I don't have $5 million to give you. So he started crying and he started pleading and he was so hurt. And the guy said, well, if you don't have to give it, I'm gonna tell you and your family to be able to pay off what you owe me. And this man cried and pleaded to the point to where he realized that he was so wrong and he needed his debt to be forgiven because he knew he couldn't pay it. But then the guy said, you know what? Because you pleaded and you cried to me for forgiveness, I'm a graceful man. I'll forgive you and wipe your debt clean. You don't owe me anything. You can go back with your family and enjoy your life. But then this man went and then started finding people who owed him money. They owed him $10, $5. What you got on my 40, homie? They owed him nothing. And yet this man began to demand them of what they owed him. They said, you owe me this, pay me back my money. See, the thing is, when we think about our relationship with God, there will always be an occasion or a reason to be offended. Always. There's not at one point where you're going to meet a perfect human being that does not have the ability to offend you, that does not have the ability to hurt you, that does not have the ability to make you angry. But God does not measure based off of how good people are towards us. He measures how good we are towards people in the midst of their evil towards us. And so here comes the question. How do I come to a point to where I start loving people? Do I start being compassionate towards people? So I start having a soft heart, one that's easy to forgive. I'm not using my words to tear down, but I'm using my words to build up, to edify, to bring life, to encourage, to speak life into people and not to speak death. Because the Bible says, how can you curse and bless with the same tongue? How can you be cursing people, mad at people, and then try to bless other people with the same tongue? You can't do that. You can't do that. That's a double tongueness, and that's a snake. The snake's got two tongues, split it to one. So how do you come to a point of actually loving people the way that Christ tells you to do? It doesn't mean that this will be easy, but what it does mean is that you will make a practice for yourself of how to get yourself out of the pit of unforgiveness, bitterness, hurt, and anger. And the key is this. Listen, Jesus put it plain and simple. He said, bless those who curse you. Pray for them and do good for them that spitefully misuse you. This is the key to loving your enemies. We have to not only, and that's the main part, it's not just that we forgive you and release you. No. God says we are to bless you and pray for you. That's the difference. That's the difference. He says that our hearts should be so enveloped in love that when a person abuses me or spitefully misuses me or attacks me or does all types of evil or wrong towards me, my return towards that person should be to pray for them, to release them from my heart into the hands of God. And then my response should be to bless them, to not say good things towards them, but to say good things about them towards God. God, I know that you've made them beautiful. I know that you made them righteous. I know that you built them up in the right way. That's you blessing the person. That's you saying niceties towards the person, giving a soft answer in a responsive wrath. See, because a lot of times what we do is we use our emotions as a barometer of truth, and your emotions are not true. The only thing that's true is the highest supreme ethic, and that is love. And if you are walking in love, then you are walking in God's truth. This is the reason why God says that this is the fulfilling of the law. That there is no other higher thing that you need to do. So we think we need to make sacrifices in order to be a Christian. No, that's not fulfilling the law. We think we need to feed a bunch of homeless people in order to be considered a Christian. No, that's not fulfilling the law. We need a bunch of do-nots, and I don't need to wear this, and I don't need to wear that, and I don't need to watch this or do that and all. No, God does not measure your walk by your sin. And he's not measuring it by your goodness. He is measuring your walk by your love. That's why he says the only two things I called you to do is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. All of these has to do with other people, not with you. And I remember I had a conversation with my wife one time in the car. This is a very interesting conversation. We was talking about people, and of course this can include ourselves too as well because we're human. But we was talking about people who, she was mentioning people who, may have dealt with selfishness and anger and frustration and bitterness, and how this is not only just rampant in our culture, but this is just a normality amongst all of us. And I had pointed out something interesting. I said, this is not necessarily that people have a problem with anger. It's never just anger. It's never just bitterness. It's never just selfishness or self-frustration and you made me mad, so therefore I will be mad and I got the right to hold it down. Yes, you always have a right to be offended, but God also has a right to be offended too. That's the reason why he says, I've forgiven you, therefore you should forgive others. But you forgive others because you also yourself need forgiveness. Because you ain't perfect. So you all need forgiveness. We all need forgiveness day by day. That's the reason why we ought to forgive and walk in grace and mercy and compassion towards others. But the interesting thing that I had said is that these things, it's not that they are an affirmative of a person has anger, or a person has selfishness, or a person has impatience, they just can't be patient. It's not so much that the person has these things, it's the lack thereof of something, which means that a person doesn't have love. See, when you have love, the Bible says that love is patient. So when you have love, you will be patient. So when you have love, you won't be easily angered. When you have love, you won't be easily irritated or unkind or holding things against people or unforgiving and all this different type of stuff. All of those things is because we are bankrupt in our bank accounts with love. And what we have to do is to fill ourselves up with more of the love of God, because you can say all of the right things. I've been there before. I've seen it. We can say all of the right things. We can say all of the good stuff, all of the sacrifices and things you need to do, and do this and do that and do this. But if we don't have love in our hearts, all of those things absolutely mean nothing to God. And it goes to show you that God counts your walk in devotion and submission to Him based off of your love, not only towards Him, but towards others.